Welcome to the Marketing Millennials, the No BS Marketing Podcast. I'm Daniel Murray, and join me for unfiltered conversations with the brains behind marketing's coolest companies. The one request I tell our guests, stories or it didn't happen. Get ready to turn the up.
Being mindful of that and going, okay, that's going to be a good ad, or I see like an incredible TV ad and my facial expressions change. I'm getting constantly mindful of the way my facial muscles are moving is a direct link to everybody talks about emotion moves. Emotion, all great ads cause emotion, but the top of the stream of emotion, the only thing you can see when it really comes to emotion is their facial expressions. So constantly observing those as a proxy for whether ads are going to work or not has been such a hack for myself.
All right, so if you're a fan of the show, you probably know what a huge fan I am of using webinars for community building. And one of the top questions I get asked from marketers is what platforms they should use to host their webinars. That's where Wistia comes in. Wistia automatically creates a customizable registration page for every one of your webinars, so you can start generating new leads in no time. And when it's time to go live, Wistia gives you total control. You can bring panelists on and off stage with a click of a button, and keep your audience engaged with Wistia's live chat, polls, and Q&A. Plus, performance tracking is a total breeze thanks to Wistia's easy sync with HubSpot, Adobe Marketo Engage, and Pardot. To make an awesome webinar today, visit wistia.com/live. That's wistia.com/live.
Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Millennials. Today's episode is a real treat. It's a session I recorded live at Marketingland 2024 with the one and only George Mack, aka the Ad Professor. We discussed what makes ads truly stand out and convert. If you want more insights like these, all the talks from the Marketingland 2024 festival will be available inside our Marketingland membership that we just launched. It's built for experienced marketers at growing companies and startups. Check the show notes below for a link on how to apply. Now, let's dive in. I am here with the George Mack, the Ad Professor. We're going to be talking about 10 mental models that you can do through advertising. And George is you might have seen him online. If you haven't, you've probably been under a rock because he's been posting all the coolest ads, all the campaigns, breaking them down for you. But we're going to break them down for you live today. So what's up, George? Welcome to Marketingland.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to chatting today.
For the time case, let's go into mental model one so we can start.
Just to give an overview for everybody who doesn't know, myself, George Mack, also creator of the account, The Ad Professor. We break down all the best ads online as well as making our own custom ads. We've helped 3 different billion-dollar companies get their best ads. And I want to just think about today. I've had a 10-year career in advertising. If I was to go back in time and not have to go through all the wasted money and pain that I went through, what would that be? So trying to condense all these mental models to as much value as possible. So the first thing I would do is actually understand what the 3 main components of advertising are, which I don't think many people know, which I break down to the art, the science, and the maths. And what you'll tend to have happen is you have, across this little lens here, man with a hammer syndrome. So the artist sees every problem like an art problem, the mathematician sees every problem like a math problem, and the scientist sees every problem like a science problem. Whereas actually, either the best advertisers themselves or more likely the best advertising teams have a combination of an artist, a scientist, and a mathematician, which I can break down a lot more in depth. But having that frame to begin with, of being able to see advertising through 3 different frames, art, science, and maths, is the biggest gap that took me 10 years of wasted money to figure out.
I think we should break them down for the audience because I think this is really important because I think, like you said, most people either fall into the gap, hey, I need to make a pretty brand ad, or hey, I need to optimize for ROAS or CAC, or I need to tinker things to over-experiment on things. So I want you to break it down a little more for everybody.
Yeah, well, the art is the most obvious one, right? Which is what the Ad Professor produces all day long, which is beautiful visual ads. So let's focus on how to become a better artist as an advertiser, which is a combination of taste. It's understanding what the consumer wants at a level that sometimes you can't quite test. So it's the combination of visual itself and then the copywriting paired with that visual. So it's a weird form of art there. So the biggest ways I would say to become a better artist as an advertiser. So number one is leaving as many ideas with your subconscious. I have a friend of mine, John, who calls his subconscious his technical co-founder. And I think it's a way of like reframing things. And we should always look at what ideas we're leaving with our subconscious because we don't do it enough. So rather than, let's say, for example, you're trying to come up with ad ideas, sit there for 20 minutes brainstorming and then leaving that question open without checking the phone, without checking ABC, and just letting the mind wander and see where it goes. You'd be amazed at how few people don't do that. They're too busy looking at other Facebook ad libraries or like trying to zone in immediately without getting any form of creative input. So letting everything go blank and then just seeing what happens from the subconscious and seeing your subconscious as a technical co-founder is so damn important. The next thing I would say on the artist list is kind of what we do on the Ad Professor, which is just collecting as many ads as possible. So you can, the famous line of great art is steal, right? So you can look at what other ads have worked previously, look at, oh, okay, I've got this Porsche ad from the 1970s. How can I apply that today? Or you know what? I'm in SaaS, but there's this cool consumer angle I've seen over here. How can I take this across? And the art of transforming across is often where great ads are made. So the ability to think more like an artist is incredibly underrated.
So for the sake of time, I want to go to the next mental model because we broke down the creative, and I think people know now those three buckets, but let's go to mental model number two.
Just to round those off, the biggest one I would say is science as well, being able to test accordingly. We can come on to that at the end. But maths, which is the biggest route is not understanding the unit of economics, which is the biggest trap that I see advertisers fall into. The next mental model, which kind of relates to the math side of things, is how to do a bottleneck analysis. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Goal. It's a book I read way too later on in life, but it's essentially looking at advertising, or the way I've taken it, it's from supply chains and logistics, but applying that to advertising. So when people say my adverts aren't working, you need to get more specific than that. Like what part of the advertising isn't working? So if you could imagine a journey, imagine your ads are like a giant factory of which raw components come in at one end and a car comes out the other end. But in your case, it's advertising money in to increase return on ad spend at the other end. So viewing it as it's coming through that conveyor belt and getting as specific as possible with the measurement. So let's say you're an app company or an e-commerce company. What is our CPM as a measurement? What is our cost per outbound click as a measurement? What is our cost per landing page view as a measurement? What is our conversion rate on that traffic as a measurement? All the way to LTV, average order value, etc. So getting as granular like a supply chain and then looking at your industry average. So looking at, okay, our industry average for the landing page view is 20% above. Okay, great. That's not the improvement area to fix. The bottleneck will be the thing that's either highest up the stack or the furthest from the industry average. So that's how you begin to view bottlenecks in advertising. Whereas what a lot of people will do is they'll work on the thing that isn't the bottleneck. They'll be making more ad creatives, but fundamentally their unit of economics is broken. Or they will be trying to get their cost per click down, but their CPMs are horrific. So being able to analyze things from a bottleneck perspective is so damn important when you're understanding the maths of advertising.
I actually really love that because when I used to be in marketing operations for SaaS, and what I used to call it is just thinking about it as different levers you can pull. So when I looked at the whole funnel, I'll be like, what is the highest value lever I could pull right now? Do we need to improve impressions? Do we need to improve ad conversions? Do we need to improve conversion rate to opportunity? What do we need to improve? And then figure out, hey, let me pull this lever. And then also look at how much does that revenue increase if we pull that lever? If it's not that high, then why are we spending hours and hours trying to pull that lever? So that's a great way to think about it. And I think a lot of people just blame the ad, what you said at the beginning.
Yes, yeah. But having that dashboard, I heard about Elon Musk's Tesla factory, and he'd have a dashboard of every single part ranked from green to red. And whichever bit was the most red, he would just go towards that and deal with that problem. And it's actually so rare for advertisers to get as specific with that funnel mapped out that they can then spot the bottlenecks that exist versus just sitting there going, things aren't working, but I don't know why.
Cool. So mental model one, we went over the art, the science, the maths. We talked a little bit about the math and the mental model two, which is granular, which you got to get like a factory worker like Tesla. What would we go in mental model three?
Number three would be how I judge whether an ad is going to work, or like what ads I think have the highest probability of working in the most simple manner possible, which I call the facial expression test. When I show somebody an ad, does their facial expression muscles change throughout? If they do, it's probably a good sign. If they don't, it's probably a bad sign. And it's amazing how simple that is, because it's really hard to kind of fake facial expression. You'll show somebody now and they go, oh yeah, that's good, but their face is completely flat. But if they like immediately within the first few seconds change, that's the single best gauge of emotion, which I can come on to, of why I think certain ads work. But constantly monitoring your own facial expression. So when you're scrolling in your feed and your facial expression changes, being mindful of that and going, okay, that's going to be a good ad. Or I see like an incredible TV ad and my facial expressions change. I'm getting constantly mindful of the way my facial muscles are moving, is a direct link to everybody talks about emotion moves. Emotion, all great ads cause emotion. But the top of the stream of emotion, the only thing you can see when it really comes to emotion is their facial expressions. So constantly observing those as a proxy for whether ads are going to work or not has been such a hack for myself.
Do you do this for yourself, or do you put a bunch of people in a room, show them an ad, and just monitor the room?
A mix. Like I'll do myself is the first pass. Like if I'm writing down ads or I'm sketching one out, or if I see somebody sends me one and I'm like Sean Puri from My First Million has that great thing of great content on the internet can be summarized by like acronyms. So like lol, what the fuck, OMG, aha, wow, like if it doesn't fit into those, it's probably a little bit too complex. So if there's my version of that is just a simple facial expression. If I'm like laughing, if I'm smiling immediately, if I'm like my pupils are diluting a little bit, if my mouth's opening up, that's probably a good sign. And then likewise, I'll run that across other people as well. I'll send them it, or I'll be with them whilst they're viewing it, and I'll see their reactions. And if I can see in the first few seconds, I go, there's some magic in that.
I actually love that. I mean, I also remember you put out something a while back where the group chat, something about
Yes.
group chat of sharing
the next
group
one.
Chat. Okay, cool. Yeah.
There you go.
So
I don't know how
we
you
can
got
go
access
into
to my notes in front of me, Daniel. That's incredible. So the next one on the list was the group chat. So essentially, you have word of mouth marketing and what I kind of call the word of the group chat. It's one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. So when designing an ad, thinking about the share button. So if there's, let's say, for example, we've got WhatsApp, which is maybe word of consumer, or iMessage, word of consumer, Slack, which is word of enterprise, Discord, which might be word of innovators, depending on who you're going after, when they see your marketing, when they see your advertising, what is the reason for them to hit that share button and send it in the group chat? And if you can't think of the reason why, it's probably not that good. I saw I think it was the Instagram CEO was talking about how much content now is consumed by the share/DM function, where you have this whole dark social that you don't see, of people just like me on Instagram, I'm just constantly sharing things to people, but I don't post that much. So optimizing for the action of, hey, nudge, look at this. This is you. We should do this together. Oh my God, this problem we were chatting about, it fixes. So looking at how do you create this kind of viral coefficient with inside the ad, optimizing for the share function. All great adverts have that inbuilt word of group chat built in.
And it's funny because great organic social looks at this very hard, but yeah, great organic social, but it's hard to sometimes change an ad persons to say, hey, this is actually an important metric to look at, because organic, you're trying to get people to share, you're trying to get engagement, where that is not really the end goal for an ad. So they don't think about, hey, how could I make this as shareable as possible? But actually flipping the mentality to say, how does this fit in the feed? How could I make it feel organic is actually way better mindset than, hey, let's just optimize for this end result.
Yes, it's the man with a hammer syndrome. Every problem looks like a nail. And being able to take on those different hats of the art, the science, and the maths is so damn important. That specific test, when I see an ad, I go, oh, okay, that's actually a genius campaign because I'm going to share this in the group chat. Versus when it's just pure, this may drive sales, I tend to find these things have a multiplier in terms of the result, the ones that people will share in their group chats.
Amazing. I mean, we're kind of flying through these, so this is great. We might have to go back and touch back on, but I want to get through the 10 and then see if we can go back to others. I love hosting webinars. Seriously, they're one of the best marketing tools to take advantage of. Level up your marketing game with Wistia's all-in-one webinar platform. Whether you've got tons of experience hosting webinars or none at all, Wistia makes it easy to create, host, market, and analyze your webinars. It's seriously foolproof. Go to wistia.com/live to start generating and nurturing leads with webinars.
That's WISTIA.com/live. So we just talked about the group chat. What? I don't have access to your next note, so I wish I knew what was next. But
we go there.
what is the next?
My cybersecurity stepped up. That's good to hear. I don't really get through 10, but I'll try and blast through as many as quickly as I can. So the I would say the actual biggest mistake I've seen people make in advertising, I was thinking about this earlier. The biggest mistake I've seen people make is building their product without thinking about the distribution first. So if I had to go back, or like one key mental model that I've seen mistakes time after time after time after time again, is people building the product and then wondering about their advertising distribution, versus I try and flip things around. So the piece of advice I always give is, for new business ideas, is to think about the advert to justify the business idea. So rather than having an elevator pitch, what does the advert look like? What does the number one advert look like for the product? And if you can't justify that, don't start the product or don't start the business until you've A, done that, and B, spoken to certain people in the distribution space that you want to go down. So you'd be amazed at how many people build the product and then realize that they need 3 times the unit of economics on advertising for that type of product, or that type of product just doesn't work well. Like, they need to go after consumers, but it's just a very difficult product to advertise. So thinking about the distribution first it's boring, but so few people do it. And the amount of dollars I've seen wasted because people haven't done it is absolutely absurd.
I just gave a presentation on, and one of the key points I gave for building a media company is distribution solves desperation, which what I mean by that is, if you desperate, you start doing bad things like putting out bad ads, sending spammy emails, all these things to try hit your number, spending too much money, rushing things. But if you have that distribution, even all the channels, I think it's even broader than just the advertising. Hey, do you have a distribution plan to like capture emails? Do you have a distribution plan to do all these things? Because at the end of the day, if you have distribution, you can monetize the way you want, you can experiment the way you want, you could do things the way you want because you've nailed down the distribution. But a lot of people think about it. So at the end of the day, it really solves that desperation part of things that you're talking about, where you're shuffling to try hit that number because you haven't thought about distribution at all.
Yeah, it's
I really like that
a timeless mistake. And the lesson I have is, don't do elevator pitches for your new idea. Create the ad or create the marketing campaign and then see if that works, and then create the product, versus doing a load of bullshit business planning that never actually validates the proposal.
Yeah, I'm loving these because I want 30 of these, so I could be talking for an hour, but I know we don't have an hour, so let's keep going.
I'll move. I'd say the next one is one of my favorite lines, which is, if you run enough A/B tests, you'll end up with a porn site. And my kind of advice there, one of the best pieces of advice I got when it comes to A/B tests, is having lines in the sand that you're not willing to go past beforehand. So you define almost a classic brand vision here, and then running the A/B tests within that brand vision that it never goes outside. And you may face some short-term losses whilst your competitors do like crazy things to grab attention. But in the long haul, you capture way more brand value by only running the A/B tests in there. And what you'll often find is, because your brand values are tighter, it may take you longer to A/B test your way within that to success. But when you do, it's way more sustainable, it's way more on brand, versus just going, well, you know what, if we sponsor a load of dodgy Twitch streamers and run ads to this page, it actually brings in 2x the revenue. However, knowing how short-term that is. And again, if you keep running enough A/B tests, where does it go? And if you don't define that, it becomes a problem. So the biggest piece of advice I always give when it comes to both content and ads is like, would you consume your own thing? And if not, then probably change the strategy. And having that guidelines in place beforehand is so damn underrated, because otherwise people will A/B test their way to a porn site. And once you've done that, it may work in the short term, it may work in the medium term, but in the long term, you end up paying a price.
I mean, that's what also people think about, is they don't think the 5 to 10 year plan on advertising at all, because they think about, hey, I need to hit this number today or tomorrow, and then they start doing too many non-branded things, and then they don't have a brand anymore. They just have a product that runs advertising, which is a dangerous place to get to.
Yes, very dangerous indeed.
Let's go to the next one.
The next one I'd run through is like essentially the idea I call sticky ideas. So the word meme, which you'll know very well, Daniel, of all people, the word meme has now become associated with like hilarious images that spread on the internet. But the origin of the word meme is actually from Richard Dawkins, and it's a way of describing behavior that spreads that isn't genetic throughout cultures. So the word meme itself is ironically quite a bad meme because people think it's something that it isn't. So I've scrapped the word meme and I use the word sticky ideas. So this both relates to advertising, but also wider marketing, as well as also ideas in culture. And essentially the idea behind that is what causes certain ideas to stick and what causes certain ideas that are just as valid or sometimes more valid that don't stick. I have two key variables for people to think about when they're trying to create sticky ideas, both in their ads and their marketing, which goes back to the facial expression test we spoke about for advertising, total emotion caused, and facial expression has been a great proxy for that, and understandability, total addressable market. And essentially you can create a very, very simple algorithm of how much emotion is caused and what's essentially the coefficient of how understandable and shareable it is. And the greater that is, the more it spreads. So you look at a term like fake news, for example. There was, I forgot the name of the terminology, but there was something before fake news, and it never stuck. That's actually goes to show my point. The fact I can't remember it. But fake news, when it came along, stuck as a meme, stuck as an idea. So the ability to create sticky ideas, which then improves both your advertising and your marketing, is those two variables, total emotion caused and how shareable / understandable it is.
Besides fake news, what is one of the ads or examples that share this as a broader idea of that shows it had virability before you could have seen it had a viral coefficient to it?
There's the classic Rolex ad. If you were here tomorrow, you'd be wearing insert our product. And that copy causes emotion. It has aspiration attached to it. If you were here tomorrow, so you've got aspiration, you've got ambition, you've got identity, you've got the future, and association. So, I mean, we'll come on to the next mental model now, but that was what Charlie Munger calls the Lollapalooza effect. So with ads, trying to stack not just one cognitive bias, not just two cognitive biases, not just three, just trying to stack them all. And what you begin to notice with Lollapalooza effects is that thing itself is greater than the sum of its components. So trying to stack as many different cognitive biases together. My favorite ads are the ones that, and we could pull up some of the Ad Professor Lollapalooza examples, but are the ones that stack as many cognitive biases back to back to back versus just one, which some ads do, versus just two. But when you get three, you go, oh, okay, this is probably what makes this ad special. It's either really good at one or it stacks 4 or 5 unique ones together.
You know what's really funny is like how many people actually even think about when they're writing that copy of a cognitive bias. Like I don't think many ad people, besides probably great copywriters, but I mean, just think, hey, this hits on this cognitive bias, this hits on this cognitive bias, this hits on this. I think most people just write an ad because they think it sounds great, not because of the bias behind the mental bias behind it, which is a problem in itself. So
I think one mistake that you can make with advertising is to not assume the consumer has as much depth as you do. So what I mean by that is when you think about yourself and you have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, it's complex. And who you represent on the outside versus who you are on the inside, there's a big gap. And then people can experience that gap in themselves, but then with they'll just, if I put this here, they're just going to buy this without really thinking deeply. But one idea I always got told was that the iceberg test. So what you see on the surface is just a very, 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 very small part of who the consumer is, but really getting not just 1 why deep, 2 whys deep, 3 whys deep about why people do things, the cognitive biases that they have. I agree. I think if you can do that, it makes copywriting a lot easier.
Let's crush the last one.
The next one is just around iteration cycles. So I think it was a guy called Nikita Bear, I heard this from, who created the viral app. And essentially he said that when they were running tests, going back to thinking like a scientist, they managed to get their iteration cycles down to every hour. So they'd know within an hour how a certain test ran, and then the next hour they could go again. So you're getting 24 cycles in an hour. My friend said to me, he had a quarterly business essentially. And he goes, hold on, if they're iterating every hour and I'm iterating every quarter, like the gap is so significant. And that's not even factoring in compound interest that comes through, because like the 4 iterations that fast versus 4 iterations over a quarter. So 4 iterations in 4 hours is often more valuable than 4 iterations over a quarter, just due to the compounding effect of everything. That ability to shorten and speeden up iteration cycles is so damn important with when you're running tests of things, as well as when you're generating new ideas for things. So looking at ways you can speed up iteration cycles. So we'll know, for example, when we have an ad idea that comes via our Slack channel, just everybody's there just in a thread, just spamming ideas as quick as possible and just making chaos happen. Because the longer you leave those iteration cycles, the harder it gets. And likewise with when it comes to advertising as well, any way that you can find out how good your ads are working as quickly as possible, the next round of advertising that you can make, and you can keep iterating and iterating and iterating from there, versus if you don't fully know for 3 weeks, you're at such a disadvantage. So always looking at how you can speed up those iteration cycles.
That iteration cycle probably changes from the amount of traffic you get per product.
Yeah.
So obviously like a high app is going to have like probably 1,000x iteration cycles than a enterprise SaaS software that is trying to get 400 customers. But I think the point that you are trying to make is like a lot of people just don't even figure out like when to start iterating, like when to start pulling things off the shelf and trying something new. And that's a hard thing to, and that's why you said also earlier with the math problem is if you could figure out the math problem, you could probably figure out where the holes happen and when to start pulling things off the shelf quicker than other things. I just want to make that point because I think an app, a lot of iteration cycles.
Yeah, but I think the devil's advocate I would play is it's not about, okay, you're never going to get an app's iteration cycles, but how do you get the best in your industry's iteration cycles? So for example, I have a friend of mine who, before he runs any ads, he has an Instagram broadcast list of like 500 super customers that he drops like different bits of content in there and begins to get their feedback before he's sending dollars or doing things like that. So there's definitely ways that you can speed up your iteration cycles more and more. So even if you are in enterprise software, if you have a few like customers that you're already big fans with, how can you already begin to test your marketing material on them that are going to give you feedback tomorrow versus wait 6 months for the market to give you it? So there's always a way.
Yeah, I actually love that. I think that's just what also a lot of things don't happen in advertising and marketing is the shareability of ideas within a team where something could be working really good in organic social and you're not sharing it to the paid team. Something could be really good in like product marketing that customers are loving in product marketing. So if you can have a way to iterate within all teams and get a good feedback loop internally, you probably will win, which a lot of people just don't do. And I've seen that when I've been on marketing teams, we just get lazy of sharing feedback throughout a team.
100%. Such a good point.
I wish we could have another 30 minutes here, but I know JC in the background is going to pull me off stage if I don't get off stage right now. So thank you so much. If you have any questions for George, please drop them in the chat. We're going to answer some questions for you after this, but thank you so much, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Keep tuning in to hear more great insights from the coolest marketers from around the world. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and follow the Marketing Millennials podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, I would greatly appreciate you giving us a 5-star rating. It helps bring more marketers into our community.